Last in line nation, here we are again, another gold session episode with our panel of three superstars. We brought them to you in January. We got a little new addition to the group today, doing some relief pitching is our guy, and I like it. I like it. We're going to do some power talk today, and I meant to bring my fire extinguisher because we're calling this one Fire Drill. FIRE. And last in line faithful, I think you understand the word breakdown, the acronyms that we love to do here. The fire drill is going to be about being fearless, being invested, getting redirected sometimes, and finally we're going to get engaged. So the FIRE is going to be full of power, going to be full of gold, and ultimately probably some heat. So we're just going to give you the warning up front. But before I do all that, hey, my three heavy hitters today, I've got Chip Baker, and I've got Stuart Hardy, and I've got Chaz Jackson. We're going to give Chip a chance to talk about who Chip is real quick and his ministry and platform. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Well, hey, John, thanks so much for the opportunity to be on with you, man. I consider it an honor anytime I get a chance to hang out with you and talk life and faith and success. So really been looking forward to the session. But myself, Chip Baker, I'm a fourth generation educator, teacher, former coach. I've been doing that for a while. I have the Success Chronicles where I interview people from all walks of life and just share their stories for positive inspiration and motivation. Also author, speaker, life coach. So man, looking forward to hanging out with my guys. Let's go get it, baby.
Let's go. Good start. Good start. And my man, Mr. Stuart Hardy.
Hey, John, thanks again for the opportunity. You mentioned you're surrounded by heavy hitters, but I'm coming in relief in the bullpen, kind of a middle reliever, not bringing the heat from the closer, but hey, just happy to be here. As Chip said, anytime we get to hang out and just talk about life is a blessing because I always leave blessed and more encouraged than when I came. So I appreciate it. I'm a part of an organization called All In Sports Outreach, and we exist to encourage coaches and athletes and communities in their walk with Christ. And one of the things we do is do a podcast interviewing coaches and athletes and just bringing sports and faith together, just with this idea that everybody has a story. And so just allowing people to tell stories.
So good, man. So good. And last but not least, speaking of blessings and speaking of gifts in a gift, I've got a guy by the name of Chaz Jackson. Talk about yourself, sir.
John, like these other Johns, I just want to start off by saying thank you for allowing me to be on your platform. It's always a blessing to be in front of you great men of God. And for me, we're a bunch of hats. I'm a husband, I'm a father, teaching, educator. The brand is gift and a gift. I truly believe we're all gifted differently to make a difference. So I've been, blessed to do that through speaking and encouraging, people to find clarity, understand accountability, and just finding purpose in life that makes sense. I'm very passionate about allowing people to understand that, hey, you are not too small to be a difference maker right now, wherever you are, wherever your circumstances are. And, delivering that through speaking engagement and coaching and training sessions. I feel, as we strive to grow, to become our greatest version of ourselves and add value to ourselves, we be more intentional to value other people and serve and add value to other people. So I'm just blessed to be in that position.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And all three of these guys are doing exactly what they say they do. And audience, you couldn't have picked a better day. I get more out of this than you guys might because I love hearing these guys and their perspective. So this is a blessing to me. I'm treating myself today along with you because my desire here, and I'll speak for these guys, is these episodes actually leave the kingdom better than the way they found it when we walked in. And in turn, you guys listening walk away different than you came in. So that's the goal. That's what we're about. So let's kick it. Let's kick it off. We're going to get hot and heavy with the fire drill today. And we're going to start off with Mr. Chip, same rotation as the intros. And I'm going to go into these questions and we're going to just chop it up real informal, real laid back, guys. Fearless. That's our first word, fire drill, FIRE, fearless. Okay. We talk about fear. We talk about fear versus faith. We talk about courage versus cowardice. That could be in all areas of life. It can be in our career, our homes. It can be in our churches, even our schools, wherever we face fear. So let me just dive right in. Talk about a time where maybe you guys felt a little bit paralyzed or stuck by fear. Chip?
Yeah, I think when I hear you ask that question, I don't think of just one experience. I think of many, right? Because there's been many. As our life, we face challenges, and when we grow through those challenges, there's always thoughts of, am I good enough? Am I capable? Do I have what it takes to achieve this? And so, for me, I think I've kind of felt like, maybe I'm not capable or maybe I'm not good enough. But I think the way we get through that is a few things. I think first we have to remember whose we are. And I know everybody's heard this, we have to remember whose we are, not just who we are. And so in knowing that, you realize that, hey, I'm a one of one. Hold on. So I'm a one of one. Like there's nobody else in the world like me. Right. So just knowing that in itself tells me, okay, like he made me good enough. Right. So whatever it is I want to be, do, see, strive to achieve, I already have it within me. I just have to realize that and then go make it happen. And so really, we have to learn how to rap. Right. And I know you like the acronym, so I'm gonna hit you with this one. We have to learn how to recover, adapt, and add positivity. In our being, having fear, growing through those things, getting the reps, getting the right reps, it makes us better.
Yeah.
And we talk about this all the time, John. The more we get reps, the better we get, and the less fearless we get, because now we've had those reps, we recovered from it, we adapted from it, we added positivity, and we've learned from it. So now you get to a point where you gain a momentum.
Yeah.
Right. And then the next thing you're like, hey, what you gonna throw at me now? Let's go. Then you're ready for the challenge. And that's kind of what it's been for me.
That's so good, man. That's so good. And, as we segue over to Stuart, we'll build on that. And, in addition to maybe Stuart has a personal situation where he had to overcome some fear, but also talk about how we deflect it. Chip did a good job laying that foundation on the fear talk. So Stuart, talk about it, maybe a time where fear got the better of you, or you were at risk of it getting the better of you and you had to deflect it. Talk about that experience.
There's been, as I was thinking through this, and even as Chip's talking, I can name a bunch of times when I've been fearful, because I have a fear of failure. Also, if I'm in a new situation, sometimes I fear not being accepted, and so that's an ongoing struggle. But there's a couple times though in my life that fear got the best of me. And when I was going into the 8th grade, our family moved for the first time. My parents had never moved, so it was new for all of us. And so I'm scared to death. I've been around the same church, same friends my whole life. I'm 14, and so I was scared to death of going to a new school, of finding a new church. I didn't know how to make new friends, because I'd been in the same town my whole life. So that's one. And then I made a decision when I was 18. I didn't think about it a lot, but ended up being a really good decision. I enlisted in the Air Force right out of high school, and that plane trip into San Antonio at 9:00 at night, getting on that bus, I was scared to death, because I thought I wanted to leave mom and dad's house, but when it was reality, I was fearful. So that's just two that really come to my mind initially. But I bring those up because then I have to realize that a fear of failure was in both of those.
Yeah.
A fear of not being accepted was in both of those, because I was going into new environments. And it's like, if I screw this up, I'm done. It was my mindset. But then I have to realize that, it's okay to have a little bit of fear, because I think a healthy fear is good.
Right.
And I think it goes back to what in Proverbs, you're talking about the fear of the Lord, fearing the Lord.
Yeah.
It's a reverence, right? So I need to have a reverence of those. I have to have a high regard for even failure, because as Chip talks about a lot, it's through those times we grow the most. And I mentioned those two things is when fear paralyzed me, because if I'm really honest with myself now at 48, those two situations in life, I grew the most.
Yeah.
And it's because once I got over this fear and I realized, to Chip's point, whose I am, that those things are not worth being scared over, because the battle's won.
That's
And
it.
God created me to be me. So why am I scared? Why am I fearful of messing up? And why am I fearful whether people accept me or not? I don't care, because I am who God created me to be. And when I hit those times of adversity, when the fear comes in, especially when it's a fear of failure,
Yeah.
that's when I grow the most. In those
Yeah.
two situations, I'm telling you, I wouldn't be the man I am today if it wasn't for those two situations, and probably the fear of failure in those two situations. Because had I gone in with no fear, then I wouldn't have grown an ounce. I probably would have failed at that point.
Yeah.
But having that fear of failure and overcoming it was it's created me who I am today.
That's awesome. Awesome. Yeah, no, hey, the fear of the unknown and the fear of hypotheticals that we magnify in our brains, in our minds, is really where this whole paralysis begins. It's about something that hadn't even happened yet. That's where we get into problems. Hey, the softball is on the tee for Mr. Chaz Jackson. Talk about fear.
Wow, there's so much good information that's been given already, and now I'll piggyback off of both of these guys. There's so many situations and stories that comes to mind, but I feel God's leading me to share this story. So for my 32nd birthday, I went into a situation where I was wanting to overcome some fear of going skydiving. So I had this group of friends. They was on the path of going with me, and I remember the day of, all my guys, they backed out on me, thinking about going 10,000 feet in that air, jumping out of a plane in a tandem position with someone else, and just feeling paralyzed. Like I remember being in that suit after signing the waiver, and I was like, man, I'm not able to jump out of this plane. Like, Chad, what are you thinking about, right? And it was this 82-year-old lady. She had went before me. And I remember her being intentional. She got on that plane, she came down, she landed wrong and hurt her knee, but the whole ideals behind her being intentional and going through with it, it was like, I seen she had that success. I see she landed. And for me, like, when I see stuff like that, I use it as leverage questions for me. It's like, I had that fear. I was like, man, this 82-year-old lady, she did this, but I got to go up there, dude. I got to do it. I got to accomplish this. So I went up there, guys, still fearful. And I remember on the other side of that fear, when I jumped out of that plane, it was bliss, right? It was one of the best experiences I ever had. It's words cannot explain it. When I got down back on land, it was like I drunk 10 pots of coffee, man. My adrenaline was crazy. It was a rush. But I mentioned that story because of two things. One, when we're dealing with fear, I heard the acronym of fear, false expectations appearing real. Things are not going to work out the way that you plan. I mentioned before I even shared the story, I thought other people was going to do it with me. That didn't work out. And, at times, for you to really overcome that fear, you're going to have to take action by yourself, right? You're going to have to be someone to believe in yourself, and other people are going to come along. The second thing that comes to mind was that 82-year-old lady, right? So, when we're thinking about that fear, it's really good to get people in front of you that are ahead of you. So she went before me. She showed me that it was possible. So that helped give me confidence to push past the fear that I was having with that skydiving experience. Yeah. And she kind of laid out that blueprint, and she didn't even know that she was doing it for me, but she did. It was like, man, I seen her accomplish it. I seen her overcome her fear of doing it. So, that gave me the leverage to push past and overcome that obstacle. And like I said, it was one of the best experiences. I will never forget it, because
Yeah.
that fear will bring bliss if you have the courage to go beyond it.
Yeah, of course. And what a story, because what a parallel we could draw with jumping out of a plane without a parachute, because sometimes that's what fear feels like. And good story, man. And what I hear you say, and all of us are saying, is, man, we blow this thing up so big in our mind, but if we can just get to the other side of it, man, God loves showing up in those moments. So it even magnifies our ability to yield to him, to yield to what he is, whose we are in him. And I mean, I think fear, like Stuart said, fear's a healthy thing sometimes whenever we defer it in the right places and we yield to the right things to fill that void. So perfect segue, perfect foundation. We're building a 4-wall refuge here, and we just nailed that first one, fearless. The next one in our fire drill, guys, is the I. And I've got down here invested. And guys, we invest our time, our efforts, our talents, our resources. We even invest in relationships, right? So how we invest in certain things is how we determine, I believe, our significance level is determined by our commitment level. And our commitment level really is proof in what we invest in. So that's where we are committed, where we are invested. So what, Chip, would you say, man, what do you get invested in? What do you get rooted in? What are you all in, bought into when the heat and the pressure is high in this whole fire drill we call life, man?
I think for me, just like with the military, you sink to your level of training, right? And so another key component that I always continue to remember is, and you've heard me say this before, input equals output, right? So
Yep.
like you can't expect great things to happen for you if you ain't put in the work to
Yep.
make great things happen for you, right? And so in knowing that, I just hold on to really my core common principles. And for me, that's faith, family, and making a positive impact. And then, again, I'm gonna go acronym on you. You talked about actions. Um, I look at CIA. Consistency, impact, and actions. Right.
Yep.
I want to be consistent in everything I do as far as being invested. Uh, I want to strive to make a positive impact in everything that I do. Right. And none of that stuff happens if I don't put in the proper actions to make those things happen. So, like, yeah, I can talk about it, but for me, I'm more so about being about it, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's what I hold on to uh, when with investing.
That's so good too, because I mean, you kind of reinforce my original introduction comment when we talk about invested is our significance really is, it lacks its potential if we're not committed. So in your words, if you're doing the right work, come and do the work, do the right work, and stay
Yes.
in that moment, right? And then significance follows, because I think significance is even further than just success. So Stuart, what do you have to add as far as invested goes, when you talk about being rooted, even focused? Like if we're dialed in, right? We're focused on the right things and we've got distractions. Talk a little bit about your ways to stay invested.
When I think about rooted, I think about the big oak tree. It's got the
Mm-hmm.
real strong roots. And if the roots aren't healthy, then the tree is going to die, right? So what are my roots? And it kind of goes a little bit what Chip said. It's what am I putting in? And it starts with me spiritually is number one.
Yeah.
What am I feeding myself every day to make the roots or the foundation of my life stable? Because I mean, Jesus told the parable, of building your foundation
Mm-hmm.
on rocks, or the soft ground. But if it's a strong foundation, when the storm comes, the house is going to stand. And it's not if, it's when the heat's going to get turned up.
Right.
I'm not talking about summer in Texas either.
Yeah.
When adversity comes, it's going to. So it's so I try to I try to be very intentional about what goes in, and I think that goes with it starts with integrity. Doing the right thing all the time, and when the lights are off, when the camera's off, what am I doing? When I'm by myself, am I doing the right thing? It's easier to do the right thing when everybody's looking, right? We can jump on here on Zoom and it looks all great, but what am I doing when the lights are off, the door's closed? So that's something I think it's very important to me. Am I perfect at it? No. Do I fail at it? Yes. But I think that's one of those roots. And and then the second root, if you will, is being accountable, is having people that hold me accountable every day. So when the heat is turned up, I can reach out to them, and they can speak that life into me and help me get through that tough situation. I just think, and then another thing, I think another root for me is love. If I'm loving,
good.
Number one, if I'm loving God well, that means I'm going to be loving my family well. If I'm loving my wife well, then I'm going to love my kids well. Then I'm going to love others well. So keeping that all in the right perspective. So when and I think another piece of that is it helps you remember what's important.
Yep.
And a lot of times is that when the heat is up in certain areas, those things are not even the most important things. And then we get distracted by that. So it's remembering what's most important, which is those strong roots, that hopefully I am that healthy oak tree.
Absolutely. Wow. What a great picture. And all of you, so far what you guys are describing is what I call non-negotiables within yourself. Like those are things that don't move, right? Those are down deep, like you said, the root of the oak tree. And so, man, Chaz, deliver the final blow here
you
on
got
this
me going last. I got to follow up these guys. It's like these guys are ready to heat, man.
They stole your thunder, man.
No, this is all good stuff, and what these giants are sharing, there's no better way of putting it, and I agree wholeheartedly. And I got to stay on that same boat. I feel for me, my values, my interests, and my principles matter. It helps me stay rooted. And for me, when I explain a value, I say, a standard or belief that you choose to filter your life decisions through. So, when I think about that, I think research shows that we have over like 50,000 thoughts a day, right? So our thoughts create actions and our actions create consequences. So for me, one of my highest values is loving and seeking God. So painting a picture here. So if I have a thought and I have an action, in between that, if I strive to build a bridge between my thoughts and my actions with that value. So, out of those 50,000 thoughts or give or take, when it's going across that bridge and it has to come in contact with me loving and seeking God, that's constantly putting me in that perspective of how I'm going to take my next action and what consequence is going to come out of that, right? It's kind of like, you have the thought of being hungry. What's going to be your action? Go to the refrigerator. What's going to be the consequence, right? You're going to get full, or you're going to be dissatisfied. So I think we just got to be real intentional. And for me, when I began to look at things in that fashion, my life became more predictable. I began to get more clarity. And I became more magnetic of attracting the things that God was calling me to do. So, that's kind of what I feel.
That's real good. That's real good, man. Man, y'all both, or all three of y'all hit that from all different angles. I love that too, because those perspectives are fresh and solid. We're going to move right along into some of the ways we get redirected in our lives, and how I like to term this sometimes is, how do we adjust our emotional or our spiritual GPS system? We got so many distractions in the world right now, and it's easy with information coming at us. We don't even have to go get it. We can just sit back and it comes to us. So we got to filter that, right? So let's talk about time, Chip, in your life when, or even right now, times where you've had to sort of course correct maybe, or assess the situation, make adjustments along the way. That might have happened a time or two, right? Maybe.
or 5,000 or 100.
5,000.
Yeah. Yeah. I think life is living and learning. The beauty of that is we know that, none of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. I think if we can assume one thing, we probably can assume that we're all broken. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, in that, it's important to know that, man, there's beauty in that process of living and learning. And so, I welcome the the failures, because I know, like we have talked about, when we
Mhm.
have those big failures, we have the biggest blessings that come in our life.
That's
Right?
good.
We achieve those great things. And so for me, I just strive to remain even keel. I think, in the good times when amazing things are happening, I strive to remain humble, you know, be grateful for the blessings, you know, and then, in the bad times, my goal is to seek the blessings in the lessons, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And remain hungry, right? And, I spell it with not HUNGRY,
Hungry.
yeah, but with like four O's, hungry. So I just strive to remain, in my course correcting and redirecting. I just strive to remain humble and hungry, and always strive to stay grounded. And for me, that works. Remembering again whose I am, remembering the sacrifices that people have made to come
Hmm.
before me, that have allowed me to be where I am and doing the things that I'm doing now, and just be appreciative of that. And so I think that really helps guide me. Uh, so
That's
that's the answer that I have for that,
That's
man.
awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. And man, to build upon that, Stuart, what if there's got to be somebody listening right now that's like, yeah, that sounds good in theory and conceptually, I get that, but I find myself sometimes there's a detour along the way, right? Something that I didn't expect. I got to get the phone, I got to plug in the new coordinates, right? I got to, in my spirit, in my emotional, my psychological state, I got to replug the coordinates because I'm off track. Talk about a time or people, things that you've seen that where you've seen that happen or felt that happen, and things you did to sort of the patchwork spiritually to get back on track.
I'm going to go to a situation or an experience. When I was younger, kind of took my eyes off of real goals, real foundations, and started making a career decision based on money,
Hmm.
and more
Yeah.
control, if you will, more
Yeah.
responsibility. So, I mean, you feed your ego, right? And so I took that job because it seemed right, because it was more money. Hey, I'm going to provide more money for my family. Um, it's just going to give me a more experience. But what I didn't know was it was going to take a lot of time away from my family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I did it for 3 years, and it was tough. I mean, we'd be sitting at the dinner table, my cell phone rings, I have to answer. It's my boss. He's in California, it's that 2 hour time difference. It's 7 o'clock, and every night, and so I had to go through it for me to learn that those things that seem good, providing more, there was a cost,
Yeah.
and it wasn't money, it was time. And so I plugged along for about 3 years, and the company went through some financial difficulties, and my boss called me and said, "Hey, you need to find a job. I can't save you."
Mm.
And had I not got that phone call, I'm not sure what would have happened, because I was enjoying fruits of that money, but understanding that time. And so I called some people that are close to me and said, "Hey, this is the situation." I was able to go back and work for the same person I left 3 years prior, when I thought that grass was greener. But what I learned was mine just needed mowing. That grass was not greener. I just needed to get the lawnmower out on my own and the weed eater and do some hedging. And so I went back to work for the same person, and I gained so much more. Although I lost some money financially, I gained so much more at home. I didn't miss the kids' practice. I didn't miss a game. And when I
Mm-hmm.
was at their practice, I was at the practice. I wasn't on my cell phone responding to an email or a text. And because there was a time when my now oldest at the time was really young, and you get in the car and say, "Dad, did you see that?" And I'm like, yeah, what happened?
Yeah.
And so I was able to actually be there. And so I think, as far as course correcting, it's just remembering it goes back to your roots. What's important? When you get off course, it's usually because you've lost focus of what's important. And we're usually chasing something that may satisfy us on the surface or temporarily, but it's really not. And so that course correction for me is just coming back to that foundation, to those roots. And it always comes with a blessing. And it may be simple as time. It may end up being more success in the job world, more money, but oftentimes it's the blessings that we'll never get until we come back to what's important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard you say that a couple times in this talk. So, for that person listening that I'm hearing you say it's important also to establish that criteria for decision making ahead of time and make that be rooted in those things you talk about important. Now, yes, you can do everything right. Sometimes you can make the decision based on all the right criteria, and you still have to probably plug in some new coordinates, right? We take a detour.
Right.
It's life. But what I'm hearing you say is more times than not, if we do establish that criteria on those things that matter, the time with the family, our spiritual health, those kinds of things, I think more times than not, we're going to come out ahead. So Chaz, let me throw you a curveball real quick. Because the only reason I'm doing this, because I know you're a curveball hitter. Okay. That's the only reason I'm doing this. So I'm going to put this up there, and I'm going to go to this other question that kind of keeps burning in me. How do we, when I talk about perspective, because I think somebody brought up perspective, I think Stuart might have earlier, but I know Stuart or Chaz and I have talked about perspective in the past, and he's got a great take on this. So here's what I want to say is, how do we, when we get in the weeds, right? The day, the life, everything's coming at us. How do we go from granular, just that microscopic focus on laser focus and missing the big picture? How do we go from granular to grateful and get our perspective back on track?
Man, that's a really good question. And we'll try our best to hit this curve that you throw. But for me, I was actually, for some reason, my freshman year in college popped back in my mind. And I can remember a curveball, granular was thrown at me my freshman year in college. I was minutes away from walking away from that football camp, my first training camp in college, and it was an experience that I never had before. I remember, being so sore. I mean, even my earlobes were sore going through this camp. You guys remember your first camp in college? I mean, it was a whole different animal. And it's going to kind of wrap back around to your question here in a minute, but situations was happening where people that we was holding each other accountable to get through that training camp, they started to drift away. I was in an uncomfortable position. There was a lot of weeds, a lot of gray areas, new experiences that was going on in that camp, because we would go through similar things in high school, but it wasn't as intense, right? I know Chip know, man.
Right.
It wasn't as intense as it was at that next level. And it was something my head coach said every day. He would say it like hundreds of times a day, that it helped me become more grateful about where I was. And three of the points that I want to hit off of that, to kind of help me get out of those weeds that you was talking about and get back garden focus,
Yeah.
And man, what he shared was, pain is temporary, giving up is forever. He would say that like 100 times a day. Pain is temporary, giving up is forever. And whenever I think about the pain, when I think about the weeds and the distractions, I constantly go back there, meaning like, this is only temporary, and me giving up, that is forever. And locking in on that. So for me, when we're talking about the being grateful aspects of things, I always just step back and look at where I am today. In that situation, is really just stepping back, like, man, I'm in college, There's a lot of people back home that don't have this opportunity, you know.
Right.
I need to be grateful for where I am. Fast forward in 2021, you know, and we all have our stories. We can draw the line and plug in the blank of circumstances, situations,
Yeah.
but really just stepping back and it's looking at how God's blessed us, right? Like, you know, we're healthy, family, my girls are healthy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
God's never left me alone. You know what I mean? Even
Yeah.
whenever, you know, there's situations where, you know, there's that fear, going back even to the fear aspects of things, the fear of rejection, the fear of the
Yeah.
unknown, the fear of failure.
Yeah.
But God always shows up. His grace never fails. So,
It's good.
and for me, you know, having that good self-talk, that keeps me going back to the grateful stage, even when I'm ungrateful, is really renewing my mind. And, you know, I have affirmations that I use to kind of get me back grounded on that whole area. But
Wow.
I think for me as well is, you know, just really understanding who God is, being in the Word, having that accountability, and truly understanding my why of doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That helps me be more grateful.
Yeah.
And knowing that, hey, there's different seasons for everything, so you're gonna have to adjust your why along the way.
Yeah.
So being open-minded for that. So
Wow. Wow. I'd say you did okay with that curveball. I'd say you did just fine. I'm going to keep throwing them, I guess. Man, no, that was great. So, you know, you might be asking yourself out there, you know, why are we talking about gratitude when we're talking about redirected? And I'll answer that by saying, look, sometimes when we redirect, we got to come back to baseline. We got to get back into what counts and keep the main thing the main thing. When we start seeing these detours and redirections and GPS coordinates that we weren't planning on, and you know, I hear Chaz talking about how he could have got right in that granular mindset of the pain and how discomfort of training camp or that practice, and he stepped back outside himself, thankfully, because he had a good mentor that said something that triggered in him. But for those of you listening, step back outside of that situation, look at the big picture as to what is temporary, what is permanent, and what to be grateful for. And I think that'll snap us out of that granular weeds perspective. So that was beautiful. All right, guys. You know, I may have to go get the fire extinguisher because I feel it heating up. I mean, it's getting a little warm. You know, Nelly said it best. It's getting hot in here, I think. And that's right. That's how old I am. So we're gonna tie a bow on this deal, and we're gonna finish it out with FIRE, and the E is engaged. There's a world out there, guys, that we've got to stay engaged in with people, in those things that matter. Chip, man, Jesus walked with 12. He could have done it by himself, right? He could have done that. So why are right connections important?
Man, a quote from one of my former pastors, Pastor Danny Green: our life moves at the speed of our relationships.
Let's go.
You know, and you think about that. I'm gonna give you one example of why it's important to be engaged and have the right connections. An example is our fire session.
Uh-oh.
Come on. Yeah, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
I'm thinking the same thing, Chip. Without this, if I'm trying to do it by myself, we do nothing.
Come on. Come on,
Right.
man.
Let's go.
And you know, we all have connected. We are from different worlds, have different experiences, but we have similar core common principles. First being our faith.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of things that we believe in that we are like-minded and like-hearted on. And so, you know, when you have those, like, you know, addition versus multiplication, like, you know, each one of us, you know, individually adds value to our world, right?
Come on.
But then now we come together.
Go on.
Oh man, it's
Go.
fire.
Go.
Oh wait a minute, it's the fire session, right? We come together, you know, it's fire, and we add more value to the world. And for me, I think that that's what it's about. You know, when we can come together, you know, we all heard teamwork makes the dream work. You know, we've all heard that, but it's so true. You know, we're here, because of other people. Like we got here
Mhm.
because of other people. So
Mhm.
that alone tells us that we need people to help us. You know,
Yep.
sometimes we may get in situations where we feel like we got it, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Absolutely.
And if you have people around you that can help you with that and show you a different way or a smoother path because of what they've experienced, then now that helps you move better and more efficiently and effectively. But it all started with you allowing yourself to be in the relationships where you can learn and grow.
Let's
Fire.
go. Let's go. Hey, I mean, I say it all the time, and I think people look at me funny, but I call it blind spot brotherhood. Like
Yeah.
I call it,
Love it.
I can't see everything. Like you said, I
Yeah.
don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
And talking to Chip, talking to Stuart, talking to Chaz, talking to other people, text, phone call. Hey, what do you think? I mean,
Yeah.
guys, there's a world out there that needs us to engage,
Yeah.
and doing it in our own strength. I've heard it said is us thinking too small. So we go God first, then we go out here and go to these connections of great people like yourselves. Man, what a great point. So I think all the other two guys here, Chad and Stuart, would agree with what Chip said and probably just hit ditto button on that. But I do want to ask you guys. So sometimes we can get on that island.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, Stuart, talk to us about when we I don't know if it's a pity party, I don't know if it's comparisons, I don't know if it's whatever, insecurity, whatever it is, we get on this island. Talk about initiate versus isolate. Talk about why or why we shouldn't isolate, and how we initiate and be intentional in reaching out and having those relationships.
I can tell you one of the dangers of it when you do what the four of us have our individual platforms, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it's through social media, and
Yeah.
so that's a trap of
Yeah.
isolation because the world is telling me I need to build a bigger brand, I need to build a bigger platform, and
Yeah.
I need to do it. But that's dangerous because although I may have some success short term, I'm going to make John, Chaz, and Chip mad. I'm going to lose the friendship because I've put myself, my quote unquote brand above the relationship. And now I'm out there by myself. And when times get tough and I want to call one of you, you're probably going to say, Stuart, who? Oh, that guy that pushed us to the side, who got that torch and lit the bridge.
Oh,
Chaz talked about building a bridge. By isolating, I'm getting the torch and I'm lighting that bridge on fire. And so that's the danger of it. And there's, we could talk for another hour on the
sure.
dangers of the mental health of that,
Yeah.
of being by myself, and the greater risk of depression and other things that can go, and bad decisions that can go. That's how you see marriages fail a lot of
Yeah.
times, is because you isolate.
Yep.
So I think just the initiative of these relationships right here is is one of the most important things. And I can tell you, my wife thinks I'm crazy when I say this, but some of my greatest friends now are not people in my community. It's people I've met, and some of them I met through you guys. And I'll tell you just a real quick story. 2 years ago, Chip and I went down to Texas High School Coaches Association convention. We did a booth
Yes.
together. I had never
Mm-hmm.
met Chip
Mm.
except
Mm.
via Zoom and text and phone. We spent 3 days hanging out with people, and some of the people that Chip knew because of his longtime career in
Yeah.
education and coaching came by the booth, and so he connected me with them. I connected him with different people. And
Yeah.
so there's friends today that I still talk to almost on a weekly or bi-weekly basis that I met there that don't live in my own community, and they pour into me. And I think that's having those people in your life kind of builds that wall around you to keep you from isolate.
Yeah.
It kind of,
Absolutely.
because if I go a month without communicating with a couple of them, I'm gonna get an earful.
That's good.
Hey, what's going on? Is there anything? What's wrong?
Yeah. It's good stuff.
And I think that's the key, is when you have those people in your life, you're not gonna isolate because they're not gonna let you.
Yep. Yep. And that's so good, man. Having those people, uh, it's insulation versus isolation. People like
There you
that
go.
one.
Insulation.
It's
That's the word.
insulation. You get those good people around you. It's insulation right? Instead of isolation. So Chaz, man, I know you, so I want to say this earlier, but this is all Texas folk now, Chip. I mean,
Right.
Chaz moved to Texas not too long ago. Now he's getting connected, right? He kind of had to understand the real benefits of this in a new landscape, but spiritually, he's already connected with a bunch of folk up in Texas right now and all over the country. So talk about the value, Chaz, of that in a new place, even, and trying to build your ministry. Talk about that.
That's an awesome question, and thank you. Yeah, you hit it right on the nail. Whenever you go to a new place, a new environment, uh, and wanting to grow based on for who's listening, the reason that I moved to Texas is I'm helping assist with a church plant. So there's a lot of work, networking goes involved with that, and in order for that harvest to grow and for you to be intentional about growing God's kingdom, you have to connect, you have to get out and make those relationships. So, and part of that for me, even going back to North Carolina, that was some inconsistency with that, and that was one of my faith moves to help me grow from a spiritual aspect, to learn how to build those relationships. Because going back to even when I was young Chaz growing up, I was more into that isolated type deal, that environment early on in life. And I can speak hours on different traumas and dramas and circumstances that put me in that position, but I was more prone to that environment of being isolated. But again, thinking about being incarcerated, right? When somebody get in trouble on a yard, where do they put them at? They put them in isolation. Right? Because that's going to be more detrimental, more sabotaging than them being even out in the environment, because you're trapped with your thoughts, and that's even a more mental health aspect of things and negative approach to life anyways. And there was on a baby, they put a baby in isolation and only fed that baby and not give it any type of interaction. What happened to that baby? It died because it didn't have no connection. So I guess where I'm getting at with all that is, we are born as human beings to feed off of connecting. And for me, going on my journey into my adulthood, I learned that whole aspect even better and even more of I have to be more intentional about reaching out to good men like these guys on this camera with me, and just being intentional about building those relationships. Because it's so easy for Chaz Jackson to hit the snooze button when it's just about me, or put that project off, or not finish that book or that blog, or go after what God's calling me to do. But whenever I know that I got Chip looking for me to really be intentional on completing that task, that's going to make me more intentional, and it's going to be more fulfilling, like with Stuart or John, even getting on this panel tonight, this afternoon. That gives us more energy and more motivation. And man, whenever we're in that state of mind, going back to the whole church aspects of things as well, that whole serving, right? Building that connection, man, that's what we put here to do, that's true fulfilling for me, and in my point of view is that serving and connecting. So
yes, sir. Man, the anchor leg of that relay, Mr. Chaz Jackson. Hey, I gotta say, part of the fool's gold that's out there right now is we can feel connected on our device, can't we? We can feel connected by liking, following, whatever, texting even. But I think nothing wrong with all that, but the true connection is being intentional of reaching out to people, even if we're, not as close maybe as we are, but there's people out there that need to hear the gospel by our actions, that need to see Jesus in us, that we need to reach out to and be servant leaders, like Chaz said. And man, I'm going to go around. This has been awesome. We hit all the four walls of this fire drill, man. We just lit them up, torched them, And I think the audience can walk away different. But I'm going to go around the horn on a lightning round of where people can find you and some of your resources. We're going to go Chip first, Mr. Baker.
Yes, sir. Well, for me, all of my social media is Chip Baker TSC, as in the Success Chronicles, except for Twitter, and that's Chip Baker 19. And all of books. You can contact me through there. I'm pretty responsive on social media. But the main thing is like normally, like people say, like, follow, subscribe, all those things. Yeah, that's great. But for me, if you go on and you see some of that positive inspiration and motivation that you like, I just ask that you would just share with someone that you love and care about to help make their world be better. So that's me.
Absolutely.
Thank you again, John, for the opportunity.
Hey, thank you. I was blessed tremendously. Stuart, tell us where we can find your podcast and any resources you might be working on, man.
The main thing is go to our website, allinsportsoutreach.org, or if you go Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the usernames may be a little different. So just in the search bar, just type in All In Sports Outreach. And one of my favorite parts of that is interacting with people. It's like Chip said, just shoot us a message. Look at my personal Twitter on there as well as Stewart318. I love to just interact with people. I just think that's what we need more of in the world. Is pouring into each other and just relationships across the country. We have that capability now. And so, check us out. I'd love to hear from you.
It's good. It's good. Solid gold. Mr. Chaz Jackson, where can we find you, sir?
Yes, sir. So you can find me on my website at chazjacksonspeech.org. Email me at chaz@chazjacksonspeech.org. Social media platforms at Chaz Jackson Speaks, Twitter at ChazJackson44. And I agree with what these giants are talking about as well. We're here to help. We're here to support. Any way we can add value to you, just know that I'm here. We want to see you succeed. We want to see your wildest dreams come true. You are gifted differently to make a difference. And any way that we can water that seed of greatness that's inside of you so you can bring that fruit forward and serve it to people in your environment. Hey, we're here to do that.
That's so good. Yeah, audience, hey, it's been another amazing experience with these guys. Our gold session hit it out of the park one more time. The fire drill was hot, of course. And hey, I hope you got something out of it. You won't find more authentic people than what you saw today. And the transparency is real. There's nothing fake, nothing plastic about these guys. They're real guys, and they actually genuinely want to be a resource for you. They want to provide you with the opportunity to walk this out, love God, lead courageously, and just, trust him even more than you do right now. So with that, audience, be blessed.